Hello and welcome. Ukrainian forces have landed on the Crimean Peninsula in a commando raid. We now have confirmation of this, that they struck a Russian radar position. Also, we have further reports of Ukrainian successes in the south. They are actually already approaching the next town south of Robotyne. So it seems like they are slowly gaining speed, while Russian reports are indicating huge number of Ukrainian troops being concentrated there. This and more in this situation report. We'll start in the north of the front line. Close to Sinkivka, we have reports of Ukrainian attacks, no confirmation of successes there. Further east, we have a confirmation of Russian successes at Travneve. This is a Ukrainian blogger, and accordingly, we take Ukrainian admissions of defeats as more serious or as serious, unlike Russian claims of their successes. So somewhere in this region, the Russians have likely advanced further south. Other than that, we have reports further south of additional fighting in the Sherebets bridgehead. There are some indications that the Russians might have had some success west of Kovalivka, so in the direction of Novoihorivka. I'm not fully able to confirm this yet, so it's not completely certain. Other than that, we have reports of Ukrainian attacks from Torske to the east and in the south in the Serebryanske forest, both in the direction of Dibrova as well as in the direction of Kuzmene. No confirmed change in territory here at all. Further south, we have reports about Russian attacks at Vesele. The Russians are claiming that they have been successful. I cannot confirm it at this point. And in and around Bakhmut, the fighting is also continuing. We now have video evidence that the Ukrainians actually advanced further into Klishivka itself. As you can see, usually the fighting was in this area. Now they have reached the center of the town, so it seems like they are slowly, it's more or less here. This seems like they're slowly advancing further into the town itself. Further south, we have reports about Russian attacks at Avdivka, here on Pervomaiske. The Russians were attacking again. They were also attacking at Marinka, here in this area, and at Novomikhailivka. The Ukrainians are reported to have attacked in the direction of Solotke. I cannot confirm any change in territory in either attacks, and we have reports of Russian attacks at Vuhledar, also no confirmation in the change of territory. Ukrainians are reported to attack south from Urushaine. They try to advance in the direction of Staromlinivka. So far, I cannot confirm any Ukrainian successes. And at Priyutne, there are also further attacks being reported. The advance here, the bulge in the front line, is still in Russian control, at least as far as I see it now. So overall, I cannot really confirm any change in the control of territory south of Velika Novosilka. This has not changed much here over the last few days. It's a little different south of Robotyne. As far as I've seen, the Ukrainians have not officially claimed the liberation yet, even though it's highly likely that Robotyne is actually fully liberated as of this point. In the south, there was a school building where where a Ukrainian flag was raised, and this should more or less confirm. I think this was this. So it's highly likely that Robotyne is fully liberated now. But this isn't the big issue or the big thing, because the Russians have lines directly south of it. So whether or not the Ukrainians control the last 5 houses or not doesn't really matter that much. But what we do have here is a Russian video of one of their FPV drone units that were attacking Ukrainian units, and it has been geolocalized to actually down here. Now this is on this map. It's this area down here, which means that the pro-Ukrainian map is seriously behind. The Ukrainians have advanced further south and are pushing further south into the Russian fortification lines here. They are in front of the this part of the fortification line and keep up their pressure, try to advance further in this region. Generally, though, we have not too much movement. We have some more informations about the Dnipro, where the Russians are unhappy. We have a telegram report here from the 705th Brigade, and they said that basically the Ukrainians are decimating them with artillery, and when they radio positions of the Ukrainians to be shelled, they don't get artillery support. And as when the commander tried to withdraw his troops, he was put into a psychiatric ward, and his deputy commanders were also dismissed because they are not allowed to leave there. There's a video of them, of the Russian soldiers saying that, so there are some issues. They are all on an island in the Dnipro, but I was not able to confirm which exact island. The Ukrainians are still attacking, though. And they are still landing. There are reports basically daily of activities here. We have Riba here writing about that too. And obviously, they always claim that more or less everyone by the Ukrainians doing those landings was destroyed. But that's not the point. The interesting part is that in the near future, the enemy intends to cross the river again. According to Riba, one of the big Russian military bloggers, they expect another crossing of the Dnipro after the one at Lahiri, Kosachi Lahiri, up here. That had recently happened. Generally, the speaker of the Southern Command is saying, of the Ukrainian Southern Command is saying that the Russians are moving units from the Kherson front over to Zaporizhzhia to reinforce there. This would show us how strong the pressure is. Over the last days, the Russians were reporting up to 80 heavy units of the Ukrainians concentrating in the Orikhiv area, trying to push further south. And according to this, the Russians are moving their troops around to address this. This shows us if they have to move units from the front line further west, that the Russian reserves are fairly thinly stretched at this moment. We have a Russian military blogger more or less confirming this, and he's the main thing that really worries now is Robotyne. It's really hard for the boys there. And by the evening, the battles were already south of the settlement where the enemy was. Objectively, there is a shortage of new blood on the front, and since many battalions lost their comrades during the entire time of fighting along the entire front line. So he's complaining about the lack of reserves, lack of reinforcements, and the units are continuously on the front line. They're not being rotated out. This will be an increasingly bigger problem for the Russians, as their combat efficiency cannot be maintained over weeks and months of fighting. Units have to be pulled out of the front line unless they are to suffer deficiencies in combat effectiveness. We have news here from the... we also have something more. I forgot about this. The Riba is reporting that in the Orikhiv area, and that's fairly interesting, the Ukrainians are now using Sukhoi 24s with harm to suppress Russian air defenses. They even claim they crossed, being flying in the sky over the Zaporizhzhia area, that they are now pushing further south, and that would be an indication that the Ukrainians prepare the area to use their own air force to suppress the Russian, to fight the Russian side, to fight the Russian ground forces, and probably to give some air cover against combat helicopters in the case they want to do a massive mechanized attack. This could be an indication that the Ukrainians finally try to do the big breakthrough where they push further south, but it's a little too early. And obviously we are sitting here we are looking here at the Russian side, but regarding the abilities of the Ukrainians, planes that lack radar warning systems and their limited number, having several of their Sukhoi 27s flying over the front line to suppress Russian air defenses, seems to be an indication that the Ukrainians are preparing something big in this area. We have here an article from the GUR, the GUR. They are saying that they did a landing, and it's basically where the Ukrainians before destroyed a air defense system, where the Russians thought it was with a brimstone missile from one of the small boats. And now the Ukrainians have actually landed at Mayak on Cape Tarankut. which is this cape here. They have attacked a Russian base there, and according to reports, destroyed several radar systems that were situated there. They raised a Ukrainian flag on one of the buildings and then withdrew. There are videos of them later here. We see them raising the flag at some point. I think this should be, we see the flag here. And at some later point, we see them on a ship driving away. Obviously, we never have full confirmation of anything, but the Russians claimed that they destroyed everything, and it doesn't really seem like this. They also claimed that they destroyed the boats the days before, and we still had videos of them, or at least likely videos of them shooting at the planes in the sky, which would be very unlikely in case the boats had been destroyed. So we do know that Ukrainian special forces went there, the forces of the military intelligence. I read about 12 personnel, so a fairly small group that destroyed radar stations. And if we look at the position of it, it's obvious why they did it. Those are the radar stations on Crimea closest in the direction of Snake Island. So whatever is started by the Ukrainians from this area would be spotted by those radar positions, and the result came fairly soon afterwards. The next day, the Russians reported a drone attack with 42 drones, 42 Ukrainian drones, the biggest drone attack so far by the Ukrainians on the Crimean Peninsula. There were explosions reported all over the peninsula. I have not seen evidence of them striking something actually. And the Russians obviously claim that they shot down all 42 of them. So whether they did or whether the Ukrainians struck something is unclear, but now we see the reason, not just for psychological reasons, but also it had a clear, direct military reason to take out those radar stations to allow for a bigger drone strike. And this will probably also mean that the Russians will have to send reinforcements, or at least to put the units here under bigger stress for higher amounts of guard duties, because this is something that could cause a problems if the Ukrainians come back and try this again at other positions on the Crimean Peninsula. So the whole area has to be guarded, and that takes troops that can't do anything else in the meantime. We come to the political sphere, and that's going to be interesting. First of all, we have the report here. I forgot to take this up, but we can do this right now. This is the wreckage of Yevgeny Prigozhin's plane being salvaged. And it doesn't seem like the Russians are too much interested in preventing damage to the wreckage for a later survey, for a later study to see the reasons of that, if you see what they are doing here. And the report was that only 8 bodies of the supposed 10 on board were recovered. But now I had it from, I have the report that later it was claimed that all 10 bodies have been found. So it seems at least the number in this is adding up. We have reports that here from the Cheka OGPU channel that the Ministry of Defense had started to create its own PMCs and wanted to use those in Africa to replace Wagner. The MOD, the Russian MOD, also wanted to start a army corps with a new army corps with 20,000 personnel. This is more or less matching the number of supposed Wagner forces that were remaining. So clear indications that the Russian Ministry of Defense tried to absorb Wagner in the last few days. And before that, in the last situational report, I told you that there were claims that the Russian Ministry of Defense had broken its agreement with Wagner and was no longer fulfilling the requirements. All of this shows that clearly Wagner's time was up and that the Russian government decided to end it all. We also have reports that Wagner didn't receive payments anymore, neither through Belarus, through Lukashenko, nor through Russia itself. And supposedly the first Wagner fighters over the last few weeks were already switching allegiance to Redat. It's the PMC that's run by the Ministry of Defense. Still though, Prigozhin believed that he would be forgiven. He actually thought that Putin would forgive him, despite Putin calling him a traitor before, talking about treason, and he hinted that he knew a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if some some problematic knowledges will surface in the future. But we also need to see that in the video he recorded before launching his military rebellion, he basically said that all the official Russian claims about the reasons for the war were invented. They had no basis in reality, and that the oligarchs were just using the area to plunder it and to enrich themselves. That he believed after recording these videos to get away with it was interesting and probably ambitious. Still though, we have here Riba writing about it, and that the commission will investigate the causes of the crash against the backdrop of constant raids by Ukrainian drones on Moscow. The version of the Arenas, I guess, launch of the air defense system may be chosen as the main one. May be chosen. Now, this is originally in Russian. And obviously, a lot of the finer details get lost in translation, but at least my understanding is that Riba wants to say they will decide it was a mistake by the air defense system to have a reason why it happened, because Putin already was in the public mourning the loss of Prigozhin, saying that the loss of his life, that he had some mistakes and he did some things wrong, but he still did serve Russia and all of this. Right now, we also had claims that in the last moment before the flight started, a present was handed over and gotten on board. So that would help claims that there was sabotage on board, a bomb was placed on board. Also claims from the Russian side were that the plane had been in maintenance recently, where a bomb could have smuggled on board. So we'll have to see what the Russian government decides the story will be, but there can be little doubt that, at least in my mind, if I see what happened before, that Prigozhin tried to gain the upper hand again, going to Africa, going public, trying to recruit again, increase recruiting, while after he had done all of this, that the government decided it's done. It coincides at the same time with Surovikin being replaced. It clearly, to me, it's clear as day that this was basically the Russian government ending this troublesome affair deliberately by killing him in this moment. And according to here to Riba, I think it is again. According to, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I meant this one here. The Ministry of Defense is saying that it has issued a new decree. And according to it, from now on, volunteers and PMCs have to swear an oath on Russia, the Russian constitution, and that they will obey the orders of superiors, which is interpreted in a way that they are meant to be put into the structure of the Ministry of Defense to make sure that there are no independent military formations anymore. We have, before we come to this, I also forgot some more thing. I'm sorry, today was a little tight, but we have pictures of the first of Czech SA-6 gainful air defense systems now being in Ukraine. They are now being delivered to obviously aid the Ukrainian air defense being staying up and remaining operative. And we have sad news for the Ukrainians. Jews, the fighter pilot Andriy Plishikov, who had the call sign Juice and gave a lot of interviews to Western media, has fallen. The Ukrainian government has confirmed it. He actually collided in air at Zhytomyr together with another plane. The Ukrainian government said it was L-39 training planes, and 3 pilots were involved, but we only have reports of 2 dying, so maybe 1 might have survived. This is interesting. Initially, I thought it could be the Ukrainians just giving us false information to hide the fact that they have lost 2 MiG-29s, as was initially reported, as obviously 2 would probably be 5 to 10% of their current inventory, and that's not something you want to tell your enemy without any charge, to freely giving the information that you have less planes available by now. But the claim was L-39, and this picture here, which seems to clearly be the plane that crashed, shows the characteristic air inlet for an L-39, and we can only see one engine either, while the MiG-29 has two. So it seems to be true that only the two training planes were lost, with obviously the pilots on board, and that somebody like Juice, with the experience he had, was flying training planes, shows us how he was probably in between combat missions, was being used to train fresh pilots to help them with his own experience. How the crash exactly happened is obviously unknown, but in training planes it could be air combat training or maybe formation flying, things where mistakes can happen, especially if it's happening fairly low. So he has died, and his girlfriend or wife, I'm not completely sure, has also published a memorial to him. So if you're interested, you can find it. He was a fairly well-known pilot, and he has had his last flight. And finally, we have a video from Robotyne. It shows us Ukrainians on board of, I'm not completely sure what this is. It might be a striker, but I don't want to be certain about it. They're shooting identified mines here on the road. And as you can see in a second, they'll be successful with this. And in the background, we can see a T-72B3M, a Russian one, that is burning. So it's Ukrainians advancing, and you can see how they hit mines. Probably, I guess, as they are on the surface, I would guess that they are remotely deployed, probably with a rocket system here. That's why they are on the surface and well visible. And you can see here how the Ukrainians solve it. That was it already for me for now. If you found this situation report interesting and good, then please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm. Also, leave a comment what you think about the landings on the Crimea, or if the advances south of Robotyne will finally show the beginning of a big breakthrough. This can be very interesting, and it also helps with the algorithm. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.